Formula One on 5 Live.
Good afternoon from Yas Marina, where the sun is beginning its slow slide towards the horizon, and the final practice session of the 2025 Formula One season is about to get underway. This is free practice 3, the last hour for the drivers to balance their cars, chase grip and sharpen themselves before qualifying under the floodlights later on today. So far, it's been Lando Norris, fastest out the blocks, quick in both Friday sessions. Let's see if he can do the triple. Up in the commentary box is myself, Harry Benjamin. And if I peer out of my window and look down at the pit lane, I can. Yes, you've turned around, Rosanna Tennant. I can spy you from here. Hello.
Hello. How could you miss me at 5 months pregnant and 6'2" tall? I take up quite a lot of real estate down here, Harry. Yes, hello. Welcome down to the pit lane. I'm just standing outside the McLaren garage. And I'm feeling pretty chuffed, actually, because it's nice and shady in the pit lane. It's nice and hot here in Abu Dhabi, 27 degrees, that's the air temperature, and the track's a little hotter at 39 degrees out there. So that's what the drivers are going to have to contend with during this session. But I'm just watching Lando Norris, who's at the back of his garage, sitting up on the cupboards, just as he was in yesterday's practice sessions at the beginning of them. He's not got his helmet on or his balaclava just yet. His race overalls are rolled down around his hips, and he's just resting against his helmet, which is on his right-hand side, as he's chatting to his trainer, John Mulvin, and a couple of the mechanics. He's just doing a little easy stretch with his neck, back and shoulders. So he's just preparing himself for the upcoming session. And if I walk across to Oscar Piastri's side of the garage, I can't see him. He's not there yet. But all of his gear and his helmets are propped up at the back of the garage, ready and waiting for him to come through to his side of the garage. So we're slowly getting there. Not quite ready for the session to start, but that's fine, because we've still got a red light at the end of the pit lane. Absolutely,
still a couple of minutes away from getting going, but we shall come back to you, Rosanna, throughout the session. I'm not alone in the commentary box, though, thankfully. With me is BBC F1 correspondent Andrew Benson, and for the remainder of the weekend, a man who knows what it's like to win a world title at the last race of the year. It's 1996 F1 world champion Damon Hill. Afternoon, gents. Three-way title showdown in the desert, Damon. Couldn't get better than that.
Can't get better. It's fantastic, isn't it? I mean, we've got so much we don't know about. I mean, we know that these guys have won 7 races each all season, which gives you some idea as to kind of how well balanced and finely balanced this is. With the exception that Lando has his rather comfortable, well, much more comfortable until recently, advantage with points. But still has to deliver, and he was quickest yesterday. That's a good start.
It certainly is. Let's just bring you up to speed with how the points table looks. Lando Norris comes in to round 24, the final race of this 2025 season, with a 12-point advantage over his teammate, over Max Verstappen's Red Bull. Then comes Norris's teammate, Oscar Piastri, a further 4 points back. So, the title permutations are simple enough for Lando Norris. All he needs to do is finish on the podium come the checkered flag on Sunday, and he will be crowned champion. For Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri, it's a little more difficult. Realistically, Max Verstappen needs to win the Grand Prix on Sunday, and for Lando Norris to finish 4th or lower, that's the way Max Verstappen can be champion. Oscar Piastri can be champion if he wins the race on Sunday, and Lando Norris finishes 6th or lower. So it's certainly Lando Norris, isn't it, Damon, in the driving seat? And do you think he'll carry a lot of confidence after Friday's session, even though one of them is fairly unrepresentative?
Yeah, I think that because you mean because of the light. Basically, what happens here is that the session we're running now. It's not terribly hot. It's only 27 degrees out there. So 29 degrees track temperature. Normally, it's a bit hotter than that. It was a bit chilly last year, but anyway, the point is the sun starts to go down into the qualifying session. So the very last run of qualifying, which is later on this evening, is actually in the dark. So the track temperature drops off. So we got when we're talking about representative. How to measure. As anyone who studies science at school, O-level science, in any experiment you do, you have to have the conditions need to be comparable. So whatever they do now isn't telling them everything they need to know. But you could say that at FP2 yesterday, when it was dark, Lando knew where he was. He was saying that he's doing a few more tweaks. They were experimenting with a few things, but 3/10 is a healthy advantage, which is what he had.
Certainly is, Andrew.
It is, but I'm not sure it's quite as far apart between Norris and Verstappen as that. So just to pick up on Damon's point, it's 39 degrees track temperature at the moment, air temperature 27. And when we get into the darkness in a few hours' time, then the track temperature will come down to what the ambient temperature is effectively, or maybe a tiny bit more. And of course that changes the way the track interacts chemically and mechanically with the tyres. And so the teams have to modify their cars to ensure that they can anticipate that, basically. And it happens in all Grand Prix, but it's particularly in these day-night races where you get this big shift. In terms of the competition between Norris and Verstappen, the headline numbers look very positive for Norris. It was 0.3 or so on one lap, actually half a second on a race simulation run if you took the full race simulation run. But Verstappen had a problem at the end of his run, and his run was twice as long as Norris's. So, of course, the longer you run, the more you degrade the tyres, the less grip you have. If you take the two runs side by side and just stop Verstappen's run where Norris is stopped, lap for lap, 700ths between them.
That is delicious ahead of Sunday's Grand Prix. But, of course, we still have one more hours running before we go qualifying later on this evening. The green light has actually come on at the end of the pit lane, but it is not an absolute rush into the pits, is it, Rosanna?
A few cars heading out on track, but it's actually nice and busy in the McLaren garage. Oscar Piastri has arrived. He's got his race overalls down still. He's been standing with his arms folded across his chest, talking to his race engineer, Tom Stallard. That's who you hear on the radio talking to him. He's been having a joke with mechanics as well, fist pumping them too. The Netflix cameras are down here in the garage, and they've had that cheeky boom over the top of their conversations, so maybe that will be in next year's series for us to all hear. They've been looking at some of the data on the screen, and then Andrea Stella came out. He shook a mechanic by the hand, went over to the pit wall, and Zach Brown's just come through, had a chat with Tom and Oscar Piastri, and he's then made his way across the pit wall. And I think he said, I need to take my seat so I don't get hit by anyone. So he's headed across. Oh no, here he is. He's gone round to say, have a good session to Lando Norris. And now I'm watching him cross over the fast lane in the pit lane, and he'll head over to the pit wall. So everybody getting ready now. But Lando Norris, he's now got his race overall zipped up, but still not with his helmet on yet. Oscar Piastri just putting his earpiece in, making sure he'll be able to hear his race engineer, Tom Stallard. And I think we're nearly getting ready to go.
So I bumped into Andrea Stella a number of times this weekend, as you saw me have a chat with him on Thursday evening, Harry, as we were preparing for our radio show.
Always an unplanned interruption, is it, with Stella?
He beckoned me over, and then I've seen him a couple of times since, and he's been... On the outside, he looks very calm and charming and smiley, as he always is in public. But I know from talking to people around McLaren that it's been a really rough week inside that team, as you can imagine, from after what happened in Qatar. And his job, and I guess this is what he's trying to project publicly, outwardly, with his calmness and general sort of warmth and smiley nature. His job is to make sure the team stay on an even keel after what have been two very, very difficult weekends for them on consecutive weekends. They were disqualified in Las Vegas after getting their calculations wrong on ride height, and then they messed up their strategy really badly in Qatar in a way that no other team in the pit lane can understand. As to how they got to a point collectively where they thought that was the right strategy. And of course it's Stella's job to kind of keep the ship on an even keel and make sure that everybody tries to put that behind them and go into this weekend as calmly as they possibly can, because as Damon will know, and I don't from personal experience, but I've witnessed the effect of it. Human beings can react oddly under pressure, and you don't get pressure bigger than a three-way title showdown in Formula One.
How do you deal with that, Damon? Where's your head at as a man coming into, if you're Lando Norris, a man coming into the final race of the year? You've got the advantage when it comes to points. The permutations are fairly simple for you, but you have a rival in Max Verstappen who has been there and done it. You've got Oscar Piastri, who kind of has nothing to lose now. You have this intensity and this scrutiny from the media and the outside world on your team, and every strategy call that's made, and this fairness first philosophy. How on earth do you manage all that as a driver?
I think that the only way you can describe it is that the way through this is to just focus on what you do for your living, which is you drive cars fast.
lap by lap.
And you do the same job with your engineers as you've always done. You speak to them, you look at the car, you work out what makes it go faster. And one of the things that's actually a kind of a solace in a way is getting back to the job you do, because as you just said, there's all these distractions, and once you get loads of things rattling around inside your head, you can't concentrate and you can get obscured. So it's very important to have silence, calmness in the head, but it is very tense. You know, when you lie down in bed at night and there's that bit between your head hitting the pillow and you trying to get to sleep. You try sleeping when you could be world champion tomorrow or not. I think Lando did actually mention a couple of races back. He said, "Listen, I usually go better when I don't sleep well." Well, you need sleep. You need to have all the energy, and you need to not burn up the energy. So it's about managing that side of things, and it is intense, and it's what you've always wanted. He said something to the effect of, "It's been 16 years. I've got all these people, and my parents and my trainers and everyone in the team been working towards helping me get to this point," and he doesn't want to let them down. So he has a little bit of weight on his shoulders, so he does know that there's a threshold, and on Sunday he'll know whether he's gone over that threshold and joined the rest of us in that little club of ours. We've got British World Champion Club.
Yes, and they could become the 11th British World Champion this weekend for Lando Norris. By the way, I will do a sync-up for you if you're listening. There's now zero action out on track. It was just the Aston Martins heading out for their usual scrub runs, but actually Franco Colapinto just appeared out of the pit lane as well in his Alpine. So the sync-up is coming at you. It's 53 minutes and 14, 13, 12... 11 seconds remaining. All quiet out on track, bar one car in Colapinto. So that means they must all be looking at Rosanna Tennant.
That's exactly what they're up to, goodness me. I've just watched Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri get into their McLaren cars. Oscar Piastri is just being strapped in by his mechanic, and Lando Norris is already safely and secure in the car. So it is quiet down in the pit lane, but let me tell you, there are camera crews galore inside the garage, outside the garage, everybody desperate to capture this moment. But there I can hear a car out on track. Oh, it is nice to hear them out and about, isn't it? A few fans in the grandstand. It's not jam-packed, as you might imagine, in FP3. Of course, another unrepresentative session. But they want to see some action, and as do we, don't we, Harry?
We do indeed, and we can hear some action. The two Alpines have decided to treat us all with some action. This will be their last race as a works team as well. The 771st and final Grand Prix for Renault as an engine supplier. Fourth on the all-time engine win list with 169 wins, but it's been a little bit of a fall from grace for them as they will take on the Mercedes power unit. I'm sure we'll come on to that and speak of that at times, but just those two cars coming on the track at the moment. Damien, we've been chatting about it all weekend long, and we've heard from the drivers, the top three, all fighting it out on track, and we're amping it up naturally. But do you think it's all been a bit polite between the two title rivals at McLaren?
You're bit,
I want a bit of I want a bit of roughness. I want a bit of tension.
I've got an interesting point to raise here, actually, because all season it's been about how McLaren have done this unique thing where they've managed to keep two drivers competing for the championship and not fall out and it get toxic. Well, there's been two examples where that's happened, right? One before, mostly it does go toxic. We think Hamilton, Rosberg, Hamilton, Alonso, Vettel, Webber, etc. But the two examples are 1984 with McLaren and Niki Lauda and Alain Prost, and 1996 with Damon Hill and Jacques Villeneuve. So, how did you keep it not toxic between you and Jacques?
We're jolly good chaps, that's why. In fact, I've got to tell you a story. I was coming through the tunnel, and Jacques was coming the other way. And he put his hand out to me and said, "Hey, you're smiling," because he always smiles, right? And I'm probably known for keeping my head down and looking glum. But and he said, "Why are you smiling?" I said, "Because I've seen you, Jack." So we're all friends. But it is a case of, I do think that I sense that Lando wants to do this sportingly. He doesn't want acrimony. He's not out to destabilise or play those games. It's easy to fall into that trap, and we've seen it before in Formula 1 where it has become very acrimonious to the point where drivers hate each other. Well, I don't think that's what we want to see, do we? But if you're talking about a title,
I think Harry does.
Harry's put his hand up. look, there's a lot of emotion involved in this, and of course you're going to sometimes get very cross with the other competitor. But, you know, if you're talking about a title fight, and I think Formula One is more like boxing in this respect than any other sport I can think of, where it comes down to one event, and this is going to be the decider. It's the title fight. Only we've got 3 people in the ring on this one. But anyway, usually with a race team, there's just 2, and your teammate, you know, so there's Prost, Senna, Mansell, Piquet, or whoever you want to call it, me and Jack. And it comes down to this final race, and what probably people want to see is I'm going to knock his block off, you know, or he's going to go down in the third, you know. You want to hear all that Muhammad Ali stuff, don't you? But I mean, that's the different sport, and I don't know what. It'd be interesting to see what reaction there would be from, let's say, Formula One, who I think are doing everything they can to build this sport up into entertainment, which is not spiteful in its sense. You know, it actually enjoys what it's doing, it enjoys the lifestyle, and it's selling all the positive things. Whereas we know that's box office. We know that the guy that comes out and says "I'll moida the bum," you know, that's sort of more gets more headlines. And we live in a world, don't we, where, you know, the spicy headline is so powerful. We kind of, maybe we shouldn't fall into that trap.
Damon, I want to stick with the boxing analogy, because I want to see the drivers have a stare down. There was none of that kind of intensity in the press conference on Thursday. Everyone was being a bit nicey. And I actually said to team principal Andrea Stella, as you can hear, Lando Norris finally leaving the McLaren garage and leaving his teammate Oscar Piastri behind. I said to Andrea, he said, I was like, all okay, you know, I enjoyed the press conference, but I want to see your guys want it more. I want them to say how much they want this title. I'm not getting that from them. And he said, that is their spirit and we respect it. But I think I do want more of that. I want to hear both of them say, this is absolutely everything. I'm going to lay everything on the line to get my maiden F1 title. Whether they fall out or not, that's another matter. But I want the passion to shine through this weekend for wanting to take that championship home.
Rosanna, I don't know if it's an answer to this, but I mean, it's there. The passion is there. And I think that they don't. It's high risk. It's a high risk game if you start playing with those things. I did it with Michael Schumacher in '95, and it backfired terribly on me. You know, I said 1 or 2 what I thought were very funny things about Michael, and it got misinterpreted and it rebounded. So you have to be a little bit careful of playing with that. You're playing with fire. Now, and I think that is going to, you know, psychologically you want to keep an even keel. So you're seeing them, they're being very cagey about what they say.
There was a photo, Damon, that we published in Autosport back in those days. That's who I used to work for.
When people read magazines.
Exactly, when people read magazines, and you were in Formula One and we were brushing swords or whatever we were doing. And you were standing in the pit lane at Silverstone, and you were leaning over the barrier as Michael went past, and you gave him 2 double V's, didn't you?
I did it. I did it just because I could see a very well-known photographer I won't mention, but anyway, on the other side.
See, that's what I want. I want a bit of that.
I sort of set it up, and I said, watch this. So I gave him the shot of a lifetime, and of course, it's there for all time, and it does. You know, if you want to take offence, then you could take offence. But I was only meant it as a bit of a joke. But unfortunately, it's now there for all time as a kind of rude signal, and it wasn't intended to say anything other than it was funny. But
well, I think you got the facial expression right, because it wasn't a serious facial expression. Okay. You know, it was obviously a joke from the way you were looking.
We're gonna have to find this photo and put it up on 5 Live Sport.
Not my finest moment.
But that's what I want as we hear the sounds of Lando Norris now out on track and heading through the left-hander of turn 1 on the soft tyre. So first proper run then with 46 minutes and 5.43 seconds on the clock. Now, Rosanna, I know she can hear me. Look, you know this isn't coming from me, but our producer of 5 Live F1 does moonlight as the 5 Live boxing producer as well, and apparently it's a face-off, not a stare down.
I think it's a stare down as well.
Oh, he's furiously shaking his head. He's not happy, Rosanna. Don't shoot the messenger.
I thought he was going to offer me a job on his boxing team.
I thought you were auditioning for it. And we talk about Netflix.
Not anymore.
Stay tuned for next year's series, I think, because unfortunately the boom mics found both of our 5 Live F1 producers in Las Vegas waiting outside the McLaren hospitality, trying to do the maths of what would happen if both cars were disqualified. So that's apparently going to make it onto next year's season, so that's going to be fun for all of us.
That'll be a killer episode.
It certainly will be. Right, okay, Lando Norris is making his way through the left-hander of turn 14. Slow and technical this section underneath the bridge at the W Hotel. The wall very inviting on the exit of 14. Then it's 2 right-handers that see off this just over 5.2 kilometre track. Rear end steps out slightly as he comes around the final corner, and he goes to the top with his first proper lap time on the soft. And we've got a 1:24.728. Gasly is second, 1.2 seconds back. Then it's Colapinto, all 3 of them on the soft tyre. Stroll and Alonso went out on the medium tyres early doors. They're now back in the pits. Leclerc and Hamilton are out there now on the soft tyre, along with Esteban Ocon, who's on the medium tyre. And Charles Leclerc is making his way now towards the last couple of corners of this track. And actually, Andrew, I think we saw yesterday that on the long runs, it looked slightly encouraging for Ferrari yesterday. Is that correct? And not complete doom and gloom as I think, well, you could argue this season, but certainly Qatar was for both Lewis Hamilton, who enjoyed consecutive Q1 exits, and indeed Charles Leclerc, who managed to salvage something in qualifying at the very least.
Not all doom and gloom, you ask me. Lando Norris
just a bit.
off average 29.270. Charles Leclerc 29.981. So I would say that's quite doomy.
Okay, fine. So it was doom and gloomy. Looking for a winless season by the looks of it for Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari. First since 2021, Lewis Hamilton looks set to go podiumless for the first time in his career, Damon.
Yeah, there's a lot of long faces at Ferrari, aren't there? I mean, they took a decision very early to stop developing this car and think about next year, as we watched Lewis Hamilton just get on the curb on the exit of turn 1 there. And they're not happy. I mean, when they go on board with Charles, especially in the wet in Vegas, do you remember that? His rears were locking up the whole time. In fact, you know, it was quite noticeable. This is the problem they've had under braking. The car is not good. And the gear changes seem awful on the way up as well. So you can tell that they're listening to it. Actually, I'm now listening to, as I speak, we're on board with Lewis. Now, he's braking for the turn 6-7 chicane. And those gear changes sound a lot slicker now than they did during the last couple of races, Qatar as well. We'll see whether they fix some stuff or not. But you're not going to change too much on this car. It's the last time it's going to run.
No, and they turned off the taps, didn't they, on development, along with a fair few teams, but Ferrari kind of sacrificing this year when they realised they didn't really have the machinery to compete.
That's the point, Harry. Every team this year has had to make a decision. They do every year. I mean, okay, it's more complicated when there are new rules coming in like there are next year, particularly when the extent of the new rules is as big as it is for 2026. But every year a team has to decide, right, okay, how long do we develop this car and when do we start developing the other one? What's the weight of the percentages in terms of effort and so on. The reason Ferrari switched to the 2026 car earlier than they planned was because this car was rubbish, basically, and they realised they weren't going to get anything out of it. That's then made the season even more rubbish than it would have been. But it's also, consequently increased the pressure on them. So McLaren have also made a decision a long time ago to switch to the 26 car. Red Bull were having new parts coming to their car for longer into the season than McLaren were, and that's how they've enabled themselves to get back into the championship fight, because if you remember, there was a new floor and a new front wing in Monza which kind of turned their season around after they were sort of kind of lost through the summer. Ferrari not been in a position to do that, but only because they made the decision that it was not worth it because the car was so bad in the first place.
For Ferrari, though, it will be big pressure on them for 2026 then, with that big regulation change, and Lewis Hamilton hoping to refine some of that form as Hülkenberg comes across the line and puts that Sauber up into 4th spot. It's Norris fastest still, though, with a 1:24.728, 4/10 clear of Lewis Hamilton. Gasly 3rd, the top 3 all on soft tyre. Then it's Hülkenberg. Leclerc went 5th on the soft tyre behind the Hulk. Bortoletto 6th. Colapinto and Ocon, the 8 times we have on the board so far, but Stroll, Tsunoda and Piastri are all out there on track at the moment. Rosanna.
And we're just waiting for Max Verstappen to leave the Red Bull garage. Lots of media attention, photographers, cameramen standing here with me. His car's still up on the jack at the moment, but the tyres are on. Tyre blankets are just being adjusted by the mechanics. One mechanic's got his hand on his hip, one hand on the tyre, just looking at the screen, watching the action unfold, but still yet to be given the signal to leave the garage for our third and final title protagonist to leave the garage and head out on track.
Yeah, his teammate for the last time will be Yuki Tsunoda, who's coming across the line now. Purple first, purple middle sector. Personal best in the final sector, so just misses out on the top spot by over a tenth and a half. This is Oscar Piastri, who looked a little down on pace yesterday. Missed FP1 due to Pato O'Ward running in that car. Then FP2, made a bit of a mistake on his quick lap in the middle sector and lost time. This will be his first proper lap over the line, and he's 4 tenths adrift of his teammate, but it does feel like Piastri's got a bit of catching up to do so far.
I have to say, he didn't look comfortable yesterday. He admitted he wasn't comfortable. He thought he would get there in the end, but he was about half a second off basically on both long runs and shorts. So that first lap from him, again not far off half a second away from Norris, is not a good sign. And I guess it's the trend of the last sort of 8 races, isn't it, that he's just not been there since he won the Dutch Grand Prix. And I'm not the only one in the paddock, Damon, who's confused about that. And
with the exception of Qatar, which was a lot of sequence of very high load, high speed, high grip corners. And when people were talking about Oscar's, let's say, unhappiness at Vegas, for example, it was put down to the fact that the track was very slippery. There's nothing, you can't get the thing to key in and grip. And this is a similar sort of track surface.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's got low wear. It is reasonably slippery.
Well, let's explore this with you, actually, because you were obviously a world champion. You'll know what Andrea Stella was talking about. I was there, Damon. Yes, you were. I can reassure you about that.
Oh, I remember.
I saw your wife shortly afterwards and everything. Yes, you were definitely there. So, look, the reason that McLaren gave was that the low grip. It was all about low grip circuits and a particular way the car slides at low grip. Which he's not as comfortable with as he is with, as you say, grippier high-speed circuits. So I'd like you to explore about why that might be the case for a driver who has a particular style. But also, what I don't understand about that as an explanation is it's not like there were no low-grip circuits in the first half of the season. Canada, for example, is a low-grip circuit. Melbourne, for example, is a low-grip circuit. And he wasn't uncompetitive there.
Yeah, so you'd have to say, well, didn't Lando win Melbourne? No.
Lando won Melbourne, but Piastri was competitive, and then Piastri was quicker than Norris in Canada. Those are just two examples.
Piastri was quicker than Lando in Canada.
Yeah, in fact, Norris ran at the back of him, remember?
Yeah, I didn't know, but he was catching him. I was about to overtake him.
Well,
if he hadn't crashed into the back.
Okay, but he wasn't uncompetitive. Put it that way.
Okay, listen, I get your point. So there's a relationship, obviously, between the track surface and the tyre. So some tyres, if you go to a smoothest track and you've got a compound which is relatively hard, the car does feel very odd because it's nothing. It feels like it's pressing down on the track surface, but it's not sticking to it. It's not gripping it. And of course, that changes with more usage on the track. Rubber goes down, and especially towards the end of a session where you've got a lot of cars, particularly on the exit of corners, putting rubber down because the track gets grippy with rubber, but it also gets grippy with hot rubber because the rubber that's going down is actually still in its sticky state. So, but until it gets to that point, the car can feel like it's all over the place. It just...
Oh, that was Lando Norris.
We'll jump then because we watched Lando Norris approaching into the last corner. Yuki Tsunoda, who was... Oh, it's not last corner, beg you, but it's turn 5, isn't it, I think?
No, it's turn 12.
Turn 12,
that tight
going
right-hander.
Okay, and that made us jump, and it would have made Lando Norris jump, and I think Yuki will be acutely embarrassed about that because he nearly caused an accident with the championship leader.
Well, yes, Tsunoda just put his hand up to sort of apologise, and he was rather dawdling on the racing line. We did see yesterday there were a couple of radio issues with some of the teams, static on the radio. So, it is part of the job that the engineer does on the pit wall to keep them updated with if there's a fast car behind them and get out of the way. So, a bit of a miscommunication there as well.
And apologies to anyone who was driving themselves when we suddenly jumped them, because I've done it. I've been there myself. We didn't mean to startle you, but it made us jump when we saw the images there. It was a very fast approaching Lando, and but the good thing about this track is there's plenty of runoff. You can take to the escape road, which is what he did, but even so, that would have given him a fright. And of course reminds us that anything can happen, and it's this business of looking out for the traps between now and when you need to be delivering the results. Stupid little things might occur like that. I mean, all he had to do is lose his front wing or lose a corner, and he wouldn't have got this session in.
No, not at all. But he lives to fight another day on that front. Charles Leclerc has just said on the radio that he's feeling much better in the high-speed corners as Hamilton goes to the top, a 1:24.470, 63 thousandths of a second clear of Norris. Behrman continues to show great form, along with Hülkenberg, both up in the top 4. Then it's Leclerc, Tsunoda, Alonso, Piastri, Ocon and Stroll, the top 10. But let's see where Max Verstappen ends up, because he has finally emerged out onto the track.
Well, let's go back to the point that Damon got interrupted in by the little moment between Norris and Tsunoda about grip, and why that's difficult for some drivers. The phenomenon you were describing. Well, why they might prefer a high grip circuit. It
might sound odd. I mean, we go to a number of different circuits, and that's the good thing about this sport, is that the tracks are not all the same, and different conditions apply, and of course we come with different tyres. So those are the variables which ebb and flow as we go through the season. And if I was to compare it to, say, tennis, they sometimes play on grass, they sometimes play on clay. Some people are good on grass, they're not good on clay, vice versa. So, this is the imponderable bit, and it's to do with driving style and driver feel and the way they conceive of what the car is doing, the inputs they put into the car. Some people are slightly better at certain things than others. And I think I would say that I'm not surprised. Well, rather, I was slightly surprised, but it was noticeable to me that Oscar seemed to like Qatar, which was a really, you had to muscle that car round those corners and put together a sequence of lefts and rights at very high speed. And that seemed to be his forte, whereas the sort of circuits where you've got very little feel and the car is prone to sliding, we're starting to see that Lando quite likes those, and he's been quite good in very slippery conditions. I might add Canada was very slippery, but anyway, there's not been slippery at one point. Not a bit too slippery, but there's not been much between them most of the season, until Lando also made some changes to his suspension on the front of the car, which he liked. And I've also heard that Liam Lawson has done something similar on his Racing Bull.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think that this speaks to the need for drivers to feel. And anyway, that's sort of the end of the
treatise.
The treatise on driver feel. But it's feedback, it's what you feel. If the car is jumping out your hands the whole time, it's very difficult to get a flow going. As we watch the flow master, George Russell, who he's been having a great season, hasn't he? And he looks like he's got the best out of that car and that team, and he's always there if he's needed. And the only other guy to have won a race, I think. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Verstappen with 7, along with Norris and Piastri. Russell 2 wins this season, and puts him 4th in the Drivers' Championship.
We've got a very odd session on our hands here at the moment, Harry, haven't we? And Verstappen, that lap you were talking about before I got back to Damon, he actually went fastest with that lap, but second fastest at the moment, only 600ths behind Verstappen, is Lance Stroll's Aston Martin, which is not something we see very often, and is not going to be the case later on. I'm pretty sure I can say that with certainty. And Lewis Hamilton is 3rd, which is also not a place we expected to see him this year. So I think we're seeing a lot of unrepresentative running at the moment.
The quickest lap time yesterday was 23.0, I think, so we're about 1.2 seconds off of that. Long way off.
A bit dusty as well, this track, as soon as you go offline. There's a bit of support action here. We've got Formula 2 and some Formula 4 racing as well. But as we say, the temperatures will dip for qualifying. Grip will increase with more running as we head into night time.
Mate, honestly,
yeah, I was sitting in the middle. Probably didn't get told.
Like, middle of the track. Literally middle of the track.
I think that's Liam Lawson having a complaint about the Haas of Oliver Behrman getting in his way on that lap. The incident that we were all jumping out of our seats for a few moments ago, Tsunoda and Norris will be investigated after the session for impeding. So we do get these things noted in free practice sessions. More often than not, they're dismissed because it's a practice session, but that one was quite severe. So I wonder if the stewards just want to have a little chat to Red Bull just to see what the communication was there and how that incident nearly happened. 30 minutes, 33, 32, 31, 30 seconds remaining of free practice 3, the final practice session of the year. It's Verstappen fastest on the soft tyre, a 1:24.245 ahead of Lance Stroll. Then comes Ollie Behrman, who's up to third, ahead of Hamilton. Then Leclerc, the top 5, with Norris in 6th. Bortoletto is 7th, ahead of Tsunoda. Lawson and Hulkenberg make up the top 10. Hadjar has just gone 11th, ahead of Alonso. Russell, Piastri's down in 14th, with Sainz in 15th. Ocon, Antonelli, Albon on 18th, Gasly and Colapinto, the 2 Alpine drivers, make up the rear of the field. Just looking to get to the end of this season, I think, are Alpine, before it's all change for them, as Hamilton's on another lap and hurtling down the back straight in his Ferrari.
Yeah, you mentioned Ollie Behrman a couple of times. What was it he said yesterday? He said this car is ridiculously good. I don't
know how. Yeah, it's a rocket ship, didn't he say?
I can't remember the exact expression, but anyway, he was so pleased with his car. You never hear that. When do you ever hear someone say, come on the radio and go, oh my God, my car's brilliant?
He was absolutely flying.
When they won a race.
Up to third. Oh, a spin for Lewis Hamilton, and he hits the wall on the exit of 9. Hamilton round in the Ferrari and hits the barrier with less than half an hour to go in this session, and that's taken damage to the front right suspension as he's wedged in the wall. Ferrari don't believe it. Red flag out. Everybody back into the pits, and that was coming into the left-hander of turn 9. Rosanna, you're outside Hamilton's garage.
Yeah, and everyone in the Ferrari garage just run to the screen to look what was going on. Marc Genet, of course, their development driver, standing with his arms folded, looking at the screen, and all the Ferrari drivers having a little chat with each other. Disappointing scenes. Let's watch it again, Harry.
Yeah, so he's heading down towards turn 9 and slams on the brakes. DRS shuts, and then the rear just folds round on him, and the barrier is there to collect him. I mean, Damon, what do you make of this? So
I'm watching closely. It looks like he turned in. The DRS shuts pretty late, and he's almost started to turn. But anyway, it had properly attached. But maybe because sometimes when it closes, it takes a while for the air to reattach, and it's possible he just didn't have enough rear downforce there when he turned in. It's either that or he was shifting down.
Something buckled at the front and snapped the rear.
Are you okay?
Yeah, sorry.
So something buckled at the front and then it snapped at the rear, is what Lewis Hamilton says.
I don't know, they just showed a shot of him going across the curb, and it did look like there was some imbalance between the wheels there. Like one wheel hadn't got any load on it, we'll see. And he's collecting bits. We're watching him now getting out the car. He's putting the front wing into the cockpit and going around helping to clear up.
It almost sums up his season a little bit, doesn't it?
What an awful season he's had. I mean, you've got to feel for the guy. It's been a lot to take.
The worst of his career, Lewis Hamilton. The honeymoon period, well, I don't think it ever really started for him and Ferrari, as he collects a bit of his broken front wing and sticks it into the cockpit of his car, so making life a little easier for the marshals. But that'll be it for Hamilton in this session, and they'll try and get that car fixed and rebuilt in time for qualifying a little later on today. You can hear qualifying on Sports Extra from 2 o'clock this afternoon. Hamilton now walking away, helmet on, but starts to take his gloves off, and bit of work to do then, not only for him but for the Ferrari mechanics.
Yeah, I want to see that again, because I know what to look for now. He's mentioned it, but it did go around very quickly in a peculiar way, so it didn't look like driver error. I'm trying to work out why he went there.
Because some sort of failure then, suddenly, if you're Charles Leclerc and Ferrari, you're a little bit worried and want some double checks done on your side of the garage.
I think we're going to get another replay, so here we can see him coming down to, again, turn 9. It's a bit of a turn before you get to turn 9. So look at the wheels and see if something...
I'm wondering if the DRS closed a bit late.
That looked like he got a puncture on his right front. There was something... Yeah, it did look like...
Something, it looked to me like... I think you saw the same thing, didn't you? Is it the little drop of the right?
It may be he's picked a puncture up Does that look like it's...
There.
Possibly.
That looks like it's deflated the right front there, but yeah, anyway, so...
Very late into the corner as he's already turned in.
Well, as he's going across the curbing, also, it looked like I didn't have...
Here we go, we're riding on board with him now. And we're getting a slow motion shot. We're keeping an eye on the front right.
It's hard to tell,
harder to see on board.
It's very difficult to see anything.
Either way, the result is Hamilton in the barrier, a broken Ferrari, and out of free practice 3.
I mean, even a bump could do it. If there's a bump there on the entry, I don't know whether there is, but if that's what we saw, Damon, here's Russell's radio.
Oi! I was just opening the radio about setup that just saw the crash.
We know the Ferrari's not a stable car aerodynamically this year, so it's not impossible that if there's a bump on the entry there, that's what's unsettled.
Or there's something in the curbing. Yeah, it could have been something in the curbing that got... sometimes the curbing, the serrations on the curbs trap bits of debris and screws and bolts and stuff, and it could be punctured the tyre.
Well, the clock continues to count down in practice, so everybody loses the time as they have to come back to the pits. 24 minutes and 39 seconds remain.
This will not be good for Oscar because he's getting even less track time now than he had before. And there are many, and a lot of them in Australia, who feel very much that he's been disadvantaged unnecessarily. But can we offer an explanation at all, Andrew?
Well, I don't think he has been, and I certainly don't think if he has, it's been intentional. But it certainly was raised in the Australian Parliament, believe it or not, this week. and the fact that it had been made it back to Oscar Piastri, he said he didn't know whether it was serious or not when he was asked about it. But
they love their sport down there, and we love them too.
They really do, and of course the Ashes is going on at the moment as well. So there's a big old English-Australian rivalry going on in cricket too. So I'm sure that weighed into that scenario. But look, I mean, you can see why this theory has developed this year, even if I'm not sure that the reality, I'm not sure the evidence is reflected by reality within McLaren. But what you've got is a series of situations where Piastri has appeared to be disadvantaged. The first one was in Hungary, where Lando Norris made a bad start and ended up, I think it was 5th on the first lap, whereas Piastri was 2nd and challenging for the lead. And they were planning a 2-stop strategy, and Norris, in an attempt to recover his race, kept going and decided to switch to a 1-stop with his engineer and was allowed to do that, and he ended up winning the race. Now, so that, some teams in the pit lane think that shouldn't have been allowed to happen, that they think that, but generally the policy with that sort of scenario is that the lead driver gets strategy priority, and that they wouldn't allow their second driver to beat their first driver, or their one driver to beat another driver, I should say, really, because Piastri's not the second driver of McLaren. In that sort of situation. Well, I'm not inside McLaren, so it can't be, can it? But Zach Brown told me in an interview that I did with him in Austin, he said when they did the strategy choice, he and Andrea Stella on the pit wall were saying this ain't going to work. And Lando drove brilliantly and pulled it off by making the tyres work for that long. The second one was Monza with the pit stops, where they chose to stop the cars in the unconventional order. So the second guy, which was Piastri, ahead of the first guy in a late pit stop, and that ended up because Norris had a slow pit stop then, and Piastri ended up ahead of him, and then they asked Piastri to give him the place back, and Piastri was upset because he thought that they'd agreed in their team strategy that talks that a slow pit stop wouldn't be a reason to reverse positions. But so that was the situation. I'm going down to Rosanna now in the pits.
I'm actually walking behind Sir Lewis Hamilton, who is just walking down the pit lane. He's holding his hands device, the safety device that they wear in the cockpit, and he's now going into the FIA garage. Does he have to get weighed again just because of that bit? I don't know with the sessions, but he's going through the FIA garage to avoid all the cameras in the paddock. His security guard was waiting for him in the paddock, so the cameras who are waiting at the paddock entry will be a bit sad. He's now coming out into the paddock bit now. Lots of people there trying to get a glimpse of him, but trying to take take a sneaky shortcut so that no one can intercept for an interview or otherwise, me included.
That was excellent viewing from our commentary box positioning, seeing Lewis Hamilton walking at quite a pace and Rosanna Tennant keeping up right behind.
Do you mean two high-performance athletes?
Yes, I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell. And then that pesky barrier at the FIA garage really saw you off at the end. Well done, Rosanna. Andrew, back to you. So you were in the middle of your flow.
Yeah, and I think that what happened there was McLaren just made a mistake. They tried to justify it initially by saying that they were looking at Leclerc and they were worried about Leclerc undercutting Piastri, but the maths didn't add up at the time. And actually, when I went back to Andrea Stella about that topic, he said, "Oh, we'll have to review it." And I've since discovered from McLaren that actually they just messed that up. Then there was Singapore, where Norris barged past Piastri on the first lap, and Piastri said, "Are we all right with Lando just barging me out of the way?" And they didn't do anything about it in the race, although they did impose a sanction on Norris for the rest of the season at the time.
Don't do it again, was that?
Yeah,
was that
no,
a sanction?
it was about something to do with ordering qualifying. That was what the sanction was. But then that sanction was removed because they had a crash at the start of the sprint in Austin, and that was Piastri's fault more than certainly Norris was completely blameless, and Piastri caused that incident more than anyone else, I would argue, and I think you agreed at the time, Damon, if I remember rightly, about cutting back in a very crowded area on the first corner. So those are the situations. And then of course we've got Qatar, where they didn't choose to pit the two drivers under the safety car when they should have done, and everyone's speculating that
exactly.
Because they didn't want to disadvantage Norris over Piastri. I don't think that's the case. I think they just completely messed that up. But look, maybe I'm naive. Maybe I've drunk the McLaren Kool-Aid. I don't know. But I like to think, I like to think that they're telling the truth when I ask multiple people at McLaren these questions.
No, they're not disadvantaging, as far as I can see it. They're definitely not. In fact, they're going at great lengths, and it's damaging themselves. It just so happens that it's backfired a little bit in their attempts to be fair and even-handed, so that they both end up in a situation where the championship will be decided between one or the other, in which case they'd give them a fair crack of the whip. They've got themselves in a situation where the Terminator, the Jaws, whatever he's called, Max Verstappen, has come up from beneath them and is within striking distance.
This is the thing. It doesn't make any sense
between them. Actually,
it doesn't make any sense for McLaren to have done what they did in Qatar deliberately, because actually all they've done, had they stopped when they stopped, Piastri would have won when they should have stopped. Sorry, I should say. Piastri would have won the race. Norris probably would have finished more or less where he did, third or fourth. He was fourth in the end. And that would have ended up with Norris leading the championship with about an 8 or 9 or 10 point gap to Piastri, depending on how it worked out, and then another 8 or 9 or 10 points to Verstappen. But because they got it wrong, they've ended up with Verstappen between them in a very threatening position to both drivers. So it's completely illogical for them to have done that deliberately. It's nonsensical. So it can't possibly have been deliberate. It's just a set of circumstances that have all happened individually that people have joined the dots between, and I think have ended up going 2 + 2 = 5, I believe.
And sometimes I think, and what we saw in Qatar, where they've been trying to overly focus on fairness, that it's been to double detriment for both drivers. But they've only been able to do this for the for the entire season, because they've had the outright fastest car pretty much all year long. With Red Bull and Max Verstappen, yes, that at times they show pace, and now coming back to them, they can't keep that fairness first philosophy if there's suddenly 4 teams in the fight. Surely,
I think they can, because if you go back to the beginning of the season, to be fair to them, they've been very consistent in what they've said. I did an interview with Oscar Piastri in Monaco where I said, look, it's great that you're having this, everyone admires this policy of fairness, you're both allowed to compete and so on and so forth. But isn't there a danger that Verstappen could end up coming through the middle of you and winning the championship? And he said, yes, there is. We know that. But both of us would rather win the championship by beating everybody fair and square on the track, including our teammates. And if that ends up losing us the championship, at least we want to have had the chance to do that. So they're aware of the jeopardy that they're creating for themselves, but that's the way they want to handle things. And Andrea Stella, he says, we are McLaren Racing. And for him, the name of the team is fundamental to the philosophy under which he runs the company. We race. And we race not just with our rivals, but we race between our two teammates as well.
Yeah, except they've acknowledged now that they may later, if it comes to it,
Yes.
they may be asking one of their drivers to do the noble thing.
Indeed.
Well, let's be real. If it's going to be anyone, it will be Oscar Piastri, most likely, who is asked to move out of the way if his championship hopes completely disappear throughout the race. By the way, sessions restarted. So, okay, they both have said that they want to win this championship fair and square. So, Damon, if you're Oscar Piastri and you are now losing this title, there's no hope for you in the closing stages, but Norris is behind you.
Yeah.
And you're asked to let him through. What are you doing? What are you doing in the cockpit of that car?
It's a very unfair question.
I know it is. That's why I'm asking
if I couldn't win the championship, why would I deprive the team of a world title? I'm probably not going to do that. That would be a very selfish thing. If I could win a championship, and they were saying,
if you were still in it,
but
if it became so, if Piastri's third, Verstappen's winning this race, and Norris is in fourth. Yeah. Norris has to get third to take the title, and Piastri, 5 laps to go. There's no doing there. Yeah. So Piastri, would you believe, would do the noble thing and move out of the way in the heat of the moment after everything that's happened this year?
Yeah. Do you know what I think? Max Verstappen's going to preclude anything like that happening, a situation arising like that, where he's going to basically he'll be in the mix somewhere. And it will make it impossible for them to make that decision, because they'll be the only choice will be, will a McLaren win the race or will Max Verstappen win the race? We
don't know, do we? It's all just conjecture at this stage, isn't it? But it is certainly all these questions will be answered come Sunday evening here in Abu Dhabi. The race will be on 5 Live from 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll be building up from midday. So lots of pre-race action and reaction, of course, after it with the Checkered Flag podcast, which is available on BBC Sounds. But we've still got 14 minutes left of the final practice session of the year. Cars back out on track. Verstappen heads the field from Stroll, Behrman third, Hamilton fourth, but now out of this session. Charles Leclerc fifth, Norris sixth ahead of Bortoletto, Tsunoda, Lawson and Ocon the top 10, with Hülkenberg in 11th ahead of Hadjar, Alonso's 13th ahead of George Russell, Oscar Piastri. Well, as we say, he might be out of this one, but he's down in 15th at the moment. He'll certainly be wanting to improve and keep those title dreams alive for as long as possible. Sainz is 16th ahead of Antonelli, Albon 18th, Gasly and Colapinto 20th and last. Right now, though, we're seeing some incredible pace from Ollie Behrman, who is continuing to run out there. It is a bit of an odd session, though, with Stroll up in second. And, of course, it's really difficult to get a full gauge of what's going on because we have different temperatures. We're in the daylight here. We don't know fuel loads either. But Ollie Behrman's continuing to find pace, certainly in the first sector. Lost a bit of time in the middle sector. A bit ragged coming out of the final corner. Lost time in the end, about 2.5 tenths of a second. But Max Verstappen continuing to find time, fastest of anybody in the first sector, the 4-time winner around this Yas Marina circuit. Max Verstappen's making his way through the left-hander of turn 9 now as he comes towards that tricky middle sector where we saw Lando Norris almost go into the back of Yuki Tsunoda as it arcs you round through 10, 11. Then you come to quite a quick stop at 12, tight 90-degree right-hander. Then you're through the slow middle sector under the W Hotel Bridge, and then you've got 2 more corners to run. Right-hander of turn 15, right-hander of turn 16, pit lane entry on the inside. Verstappen stays on the track, finds a 10th and a half, and finds even more time, and with a 1:24.116 further cements that P1 position. Charles Leclerc is the only remaining Ferrari right now. We actually just had a question come in on hashtag BBCF1 after Hamilton found his Ferrari into the wall, and it's a big one, and well, with 12 minutes to go, maybe it's worth just having a bit of a word on it and seeing what Damon thinks about it. This is from Phrase. Hi guys, do any of you think Lewis would or will walk away from the sport on Monday like Nico Rosberg?
I have no idea.
He's got 130 million reasons not to.
He doesn't need any more money,
doesn't he?
Look, I think he wants to find out what's going to happen to next year's car. Why would you walk away? he'd feel sick as a dog, wouldn't he? If the car was really good. So he's not going to walk away.
Well, there's your answer phrase.
Yeah,
he's not going to walk away.
He already feels sick as a dog anyway. But I mean, I think he's hoping that next year's car, Ferrari, could get lucky. They could, not lucky. They've put in all the right.
But they might find the sweet spot, and 2026 is a big regulation reset. We are effectively resetting the entire field, and you either get it right or you get it wrong.
Well, there's two things to say about next year. One is it will change the competitive order. We just don't know to what degree or in what way. But the other thing to say is the character of the cars is changing completely. These ground effect, or Venturi effects, I would say, is what Adrian Newey would admonish me for calling them ground effect cars. He would say all cars have ground effects. Venturi tunnel cars, they're being abandoned by Formula One after 4 years of regulation. And we're going back to what they call a step plane car, which is more like the cars that Damon used to drive, with flat bottoms on either side of the central chassis area and then a diffuser at the back. And those are the cars in which Hamilton has had all of his success in Formula One, whereas he's not really got on with these Venturi cars. So he'll be hoping those two things both align, that he will then be more competitive personally and that Ferrari will be more competitive as a team.
Well, I mean, bye-bye Venturi then. We've tried them twice in Formula One, and every time we've decided they don't work. But the only thing we haven't tried is Venturi with active suspension, because, of course, it's controlling the ride height, which is the big problem with these cars.
It's a really good point, actually. Yeah.
No, I make good points there, Andrew. That's what I'm paying me for.
That's why we have you on 5 Live F1. Damon Hill, the 1996 F1 World Champion, with us for the rest of the weekend. Should just say McLaren have been exchanging fastest lap times. Piastri was fastest with a good lap, but Norris just put that in the shade by over 2.5 tenths of a second. Was
that your idea or Adrian's?
Oh, I think lots of much smarter people than me would have thought of it as well. Don't worry.
Rosanna, let's head down to you.
Well, Harry, I just wanted to pick up on the Lewis Hamilton topic as Oscar Piastri comes in to his pit box. McLaren mechanics are there ready to greet him with some leaf blowers to keep the car nice and cool. Because it was in Vegas a couple of weekends ago that Lewis Hamilton told me he's not looking forward to next season. I tried to press him on whether that meant he would walk away. He wouldn't give me an answer. But fast forward a couple of weeks, and here we are in Abu Dhabi. And it was on Thursday that he was saying he's got to work out, after this weekend, his approach when it comes to talking to the Ferrari stakeholders, because he thinks some big changes need to happen, and that's when it comes to the people that work around him, operationally. And he was pressed on that point and said, are these changes pivotal? He said, yeah, they have to be changed. It cannot carry on like this. So, as Damon said, it would be a fool to walk away from a project that he doesn't yet know how it will go, but at the same time he knows he needs to change things in order for that project to even be a success, I think. So lots to come from Sir Lewis Hamilton, I think, in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I can't see him doing a walk away before 2026 reveals its cards.
We ought to mention something about what's happening this year, Harry, which is Oscar Piastri is second to Lando Norris in this session with 8 minutes to go. In that last flurry of activity, they've had to all get out on the track and put in the time, and if you just stop the clock now, you'd have 0.255 gap from Piastri to Lando Norris. So I think it's a pretty good effort from Oscar Piastri, who's had very little running, to get that close to Lando, so that it's starting to hot up there at the sharp end.
It is. So we were actually watching Lando Norris's lap, and he took a little bit too much curb in the chicane, so lost a bit of time there. So it wasn't a completely smooth lap from him, but still found that gap over Piastri.
And Verstappen has just gone out on a new set of soft tyres, so let's see how he gets on compared to those McLarens.
Fernando Alonso, fastest of anybody in the first sector. Gabriel Bortoleto comes to the line first and puts himself up into fifth. Could be a really competitive midfield here. Hulkenberg third, Lawson fourth, Bortoleto fifth. Alonso navigating his way now through the left-hander of turn number 14. Through the right-hander of 15, runs out to the white line, doesn't touch the curb, has to have a couple of turn-ins on the steering wheel as he crosses the line, half a second off, enough for fourth at this stage.
You noticed that, Harry. I was very impressed with that. You noticed as we were on board with Fernando Alonso turning in for the last corner that he had a little bit too much understeering, he had to take another bite at it. And it didn't work, did it? So that's where you lose time. You want the front end to stick on the line you've chosen. And it's either the back of the car that's going to start trying to overtake you, or the front just wants to go straight. This is the imbalance, the small smidgens of readjustment that cost you this time, this valuable 2/10 or something, or a tenth of a second. Anyway, as we're on board with Ollie Behrman, who again also similarly going into the last corner takes 2 bites at going into the last corner, and it could be the win. But anyway, Ollie Behrman's put up a very competitive time. Again, very happy with his car.
I think it's mighty impressive from Haas at the moment, as there is contact in the pit lane between Kimi Antonelli a little earlier, going into the Red Bull of Yuki Tsunoda, and I think taking a chunk out of his side pod. Tsunoda was in the fast lane, and we're riding on board with Tsunoda now. Then suddenly he just gets a whack from Antonelli that's released into the side of him.
I have a massive crash.
You got damage?
I think so. I mean, he had the damage, so by the side of the port.
Yeah, that was Tsunoda thinking he's got contact, and Antonelli's he peels out of the garage. Here he is on the radio.
Straight out.
Man, you told me yes, and it was Tsunoda was coming.
Right.
That's being investigated after the race for an unsafe release.
And his engineer, is it Bono?
Bono, yeah.
So, I don't know who said go out, but anyway, he did. You heard the voice of the one of the Mercedes engineers saying to go out, and of course he did, and went straight into Yuki Tsunoda. And at the moment it happened, I thought, oh my God, is that Max Verstappen he's crashed into? And I was imagining what sort of fallout we get from a story like that. But as we say that, George Russell has gone quickest with a relatively competitive time, and he's done a fine job this year, and Max Verstappen has also posted 3rd quickest in his run, so he did finally get a time in about 2/10 off of Russell's time.
So with less than 5 minutes remaining, it's Russell on top with a 1:23.334, 0.04 of a second quicker than Lando Norris. Then comes Verstappen for the 10th and over 10th and a half back, then Piastri in 4th. Ocon is up to 5th, finding a bit of pace in his Haas, which Ollie Behrman has had all weekend long so far. Leclerc is 7th behind Behrman. The 2 Williams are 8th and 9th with Albon and Sainz. Then comes Hulkenberg in 10th. Alonso is 11th ahead of the 2 Racing Bulls, Lawson, Hadjar. Stroll is 14th ahead of Gasly. Bortoletto is in 17th with Hamilton out of this one. Tsunoda, Colapinto and Kimi Antonelli find themselves at the back, and that was a bit of damage taken out from the side pod of Yuki Tsunoda's Red Bull.
Yeah, that's probably, well, several £100,000 worth of damage there.
Yeah, and a bit of front wing damage for Kimi Antonelli too.
I'm not sure about the side pod, but certainly the front wing, a lot of it came off. The side pod looked pretty...
Was it all right? Maybe it was the floor,
okay.
sort of the underside of the floor that just jutted out, but something definitely dropped off. There's carbon fibre in the...
That's the front wing end plate, yeah.
Front wing end plate for... Well, certainly... Well, Kimi Antonelli's front wing end plate is done. It's not Tsunoda's front wing end plate. He's still got that there. As that rather got in the way of the Williams that was coming into the pit lane. That's the last thing Tsunoda needs, isn't it? He just wants a clean weekend and one of his final race as a Formula 1 driver. Will we see him back? We won't see him back next year. He'll remain within the Red Bull fold as a test and reserve driver, but... I mean, David, I don't know. How do you think Yuki will get on in the future? Is this his Formula 1 days done?
The problem is for the car still jumps. I can't keep my feet on the pedals.
So that's a problem, that the car still jumps. Can't keep his feet on the pedals. That's Tsunoda's teammate Max Verstappen. So he was jumping and bouncing all over the place this time a week ago.
I've never heard him referred to as Tsunoda's teammate.
Yeah, I know. Well, I was trying to segue the Tsunoda chat into Verstappen.
But anyway, that was one of the title hopefuls here. Max Verstappen is complaining his feet are jumping off the floor, so he can't keep them on the pedal. I mean, this is one of the smoothest tracks we come to. I can't believe he's talking about any bumps at all. So where are these bumps? Maybe it's on the curbs, but it just shows you how stiff these cars are. They have to be able to get the best performance out of the, as we were talking about before, the Venturi formula. What did you describe them as, Andrew? Venturi chassis?
Venturi floors.
Venturi floors.
That's the shape.
Not ground effect, no.
Well, it is ground effect.
It is ground effect. They're all ground effect. Yes,
yeah,
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, these cars, these actual cars that we're racing right now have to be very, very low to the ground, so you can imagine they have to have extremely stiff suspension. Of course, that means that Max Verstappen's feet keep jumping off when it's a bump.
Well, he's good enough for 3rd at the moment, but maybe there's more time in the tank for Max Verstappen. Our 3 title contenders are currently 2nd, 3rd and 4th in this final practice session before the lights come on around this Yas Marina circuit. 5.2 kilometres, just over 3.2 miles with 16 turns. reaching speeds of over 320 kilometres an hour before we go qualifying later on today. That's on 5 Sports Extra from 2 o'clock this afternoon. So Norris rounds the final corner.
Oh yeah, a better lap there from Lando, and he's got Floviz on the rear wing, so that's interesting. They're doing a little bit of research there. He didn't actually beat his own time, I don't think. He was on a good lap, wasn't it? It was his better lap time, and then that was a replay.
Stays 4 thousandths of a second below Russell. Got yellow flag out on track, but it goes away very briefly.
On the exit of the last corner, we saw him. He was drifting. He was really had the car right on the limit there, and it was actually running out of road on the exit of the last corner. So that was a pretty, good attempt by Lando. He was definitely trying to get the most out of the car. But this is going to be that's his last chance before we go into qualifying now. It's running down to 30 seconds to go of this session. So they've all had their chance to get their setups and their feel for what's going on, but so far I don't think we've really seen a representative grid at all. I mean, Piastri is currently 5th, 2.5 tenths down from Russell, who's quickest.
I think this is setting us up for a really exciting first part of qualifying, going a little bit into the unknown, but certainly George Russell finding pace right at the end of this session. Lando Norris has looked quick out the blocks. I think it will be a tight fight between our title protagonists, and maybe throw in a Mercedes, maybe even throw in a plucky midfield runner, or a Fernando Alonso who's just put himself up into 4th place in the Aston Martin.
That is a pretty good effort, but as I said, I don't think we're seeing anything at the moment. I think there's a lot more to come from all the main contenders as we're on board with Verstappen, I think he's just doing another lap before he comes into the pits. I can't believe he may have got another run, but he may be doing 2 laps on a soft tyre, because the first sector was slow. Now he's got the best middle sector he's done. It's not the quickest, but he's now going through the section of the circuit where it goes underneath the hotel and round the harbour. Famous turn 13.
Yeah, through the hotel on the exit of 14.
Infamous turn 13.
The infamous turn 13. Max Verstappen knows it well, but 1 corner left to run. The clock is counted down to 0. The Dutchman, personal best in the middle sector and the final sector, but lost a little bit too much in that first sector, 3rd, and a 10th and a half back. So it does improve his time, but not his position. It's George Russell then, who ends the final practice session of the 2025 Formula One season fastest. The Mercedes man, a 1:23.334, with absolutely nothing, 4 thousandths of a second separating him from his compatriot Lando Norris. Max Verstappen finishes in 3rd, Fernando Alonso 4th, Piastri within 3 tenths down in 5th. Then it's the 2 Haas cars, Ocon ahead of Ben in 6th and 7th, with Charles Leclerc in 8th for Ferrari. Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes is 9th, Alex Albon the top 10, Bortoletto in 11th, Sainz 12th, Hülkenberg 13th, then comes Stroll, Lawson 15th ahead of Hadjar, Gasly 17th, Hamilton after his crash into the wall and the red flag ended up down in 18th, Colapinto 19th, Tsunoda after his crash in the pit lane 20th. Rosanna, final thoughts after our final practice session of the year?
Yeah, I think George Russell will be pleased with that. A nice little confidence boost moving into qualifying, because yesterday Mercedes were complaining of graining, of bouncing, and we heard Max Verstappen saying he was struggling with bouncing today. So Mercedes will be pleased that they've worked overnight on those little weaknesses. So I think, as you said, Harry, this sets things up very nicely for qualifying. And as we know, it's all important around this track, which can be difficult to overtake on.
It certainly can be. Pole, so important here. 10 of the last 12 Grand Prix have been won from pole position here at Yas Marina. The last 12 have been won from the front row. And the gap between the top 5 drivers just under 3 tenths of a second. And that top 5 contains our 3 title rivals. Lando Norris, who has the most to lose, with a 12-point lead coming into the final race. If he stands on the podium on Sunday, he is champion. Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri still are in this fight, but they need things to go their way. They ultimately need to win the Grand Prix and hope Lando Norris finishes off the podium or lower than 6th place for Verstappen or Piastri to take their crown. But we've got an exciting qualifying coming your way. You can hear it all on Sports Extra from 2 o'clock this afternoon. We'll be building up from 1:55 in what could be the most crucial qualifying of the year. And the harbour falls quiet momentarily, but will soon flood back into action, and the floodlights will come on and illuminate this Yas Marina circuit. Almost 5,000 fixtures used to light this track, where each corner will bring a challenge for our drivers, particularly our top three. But could a George Russell spring a surprise? What about that midfield looking incredibly competitive and tight? Throw in the Aston Martin. We'll take a couple of Haas cars. And what about the Williams as well? There's a championship up for grabs, but there's also a lot to be solved in that midfield fight too in the Constructors' Championship. We'll be keeping an eye on all of it come Sunday afternoon. That race getting off at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on 5 Live. But next up, we will go qualifying ahead of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. George Russell fastest at the final practice session of the year. Lando Norris finishing just 0.04 of a second behind in second, ahead of his title rival Max Verstappen, and Oscar Piastri finishing inside the top 5. But our three title rivals split by less than 0.3 of a second. Next up is qualifying, so crucial here. 10 of the last 12 races have been won from pole position. One small mistake under the lights in Yas Marina tonight could be the undoing of a championship.